Hey all, welcome back. The goal of this lesson is to illustrate how to query historical events on the Ethereum blockchain from a front-end web application. A lot of you have been asking for this content. We did do a video on how to listen to events, but in this video we're going to look at how we can query historical events. So these are events that have happened in the past in previous blocks. This becomes mega useful if we want to develop, say, analytical dashboards or develop different ways to keep an eye on or query different things that are happening within projects that we're following. Different NFT projects, maybe some DeFi projects. So I think the first thing we need to do is kind of level set and talk about what exactly is an event on the Ethereum blockchain. And I'm going to go ahead and link in the show notes below this blog post here, Understanding Event Logs on the Ethereum Blockchain. Super useful. It goes into some more smart contract focused content. We'll probably do some of that in our smart contract development series coming up soon. But basically, an event on Ethereum is something that we can do within the context of a smart contract that allows us to log information. And it really serves as a cheap way for us to store information on the blockchain. Now, a log or an event log on the blockchain can consist of really two things: topics and data. Topics, we can have up to 4 topics, and these are really the fields that we can query against. These are the fields that we're able to say, hey, if anybody here listening to this is familiar with SQL, where we could do like a select all from where something equals something. Say, for example, I want to see any transfer that happened with token 4 in this specific NFT project at this contract address. We could do that by using topics. Data, on the other hand, is information that we can't query. It's basically information that would be returned when we query against those specific topics. So we can have up to 4 topics. Those correlate to specific Ethereum virtual machine opcodes within the actual opcode. I'm not going to go too crazy deep into that. That's more smart contract focused. What I'd like to do is kind of stay more focused on the front end and how we can actually leverage what these events are. So let's go ahead and let's just see for a minute where these events are viewed on the blockchain themselves. So I'm going to dive over to Etherscan, and let's go ahead. I'm just going to refresh the page quick. And I'm just going to randomly select the last block that was mined. This was mined about 21 seconds ago. I'm going to dive into that, and there are 190 transactions in here. So if I click into that, you can see here that here is a transfer method against some contract. Actually, this might not even be, no, this is not against the contract. Let's do this one, get reward. This looks like it's probably against the smart contract. There we go. And now we're looking at a transaction that has happened just 46 seconds ago. And if we go ahead and look at this tab here, logs, this is going to show us the different logs that were fired when this transaction was executed. So you can see here that we have 2 logs. We have this transfer and we have this reward paid. And now this is very specific to the given smart contract that we are that we're looking at here. So this rewards paid is probably something that is specific to this project. It must be paying out some type of reward. And the transfer, this may actually be more standard. And this is where it gets interesting because we have standards in some of these different tokens. So for example, the ERC20 token standard for fungible tokens and the ERC721 or 1155 standard for NFTs or non-fungible tokens, we have standard events that fire at certain times. Transfer is being one of them. Whenever we transfer a token to or value from or to a contract, we should see this event fire. Now you can see here, just like I said earlier, there are topics and there is data associated with each one of these logged events. Now the first topic, index 0, is always going to be an encoded value of the actual name of the event. So technically this is a Ketchak 256 encoded hash of the function signature of this actual event name along with its parameters. So again, I'll link this down below, but this nifty little tool here can illustrate that. So if we take the transfer function signature, remove all of the spaces, and just include the types of the parameters, in this case, address, and value. And I don't think address, yep, this looks like it matches. So that's good. So if we take this, then copy this and search for it here, you'll see, boom, we actually have the first topic. Now you'll notice here that topics is an array. So we have index 0, or the first entry in this array is that value. Now the other topics can be anything we index or we specify we index. And you can see here that it says index topic 1, index topic 2. So the first topic here is going to be the from address, and the second topic here is going to be the to address. And this is how we can then query and say, hey, I only want to see transfers where the to address is equal to this address because it's an indexed address. This is how we can start to see how we can query against these events to get the information that we want. Now, it may seem a little complicated at first, but as you start to do it and work it out, I think it becomes pretty clear. So why don't we go ahead and try to get this working within our demo application. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and dive over to Stack Starter, and we're going to fire up our vanilla stack here, and we're going to start coding. So we have our vanilla stack. We have our small test application here, which is just kind of a menu of buttons for us to just work out different topics and test and play with different things. I'm going to go ahead and open up our console here so that we can see what's going on in the console. And we should have our code up here. Now our code, we're working in the main.js file, and we basically just have a collection of functions. So we're going to go ahead and write another function that is basically going to query one of the an NFT project. Now, what NFT project should we actually query here? Let's see. Let's go to OpenSea and go to stats. A project I've been really digging, well, it's down on the list now, Moonbirds. Moonbirds is an interesting project. So let's go ahead and see if we can query some transfer events from the Moonbirds project. So how would we actually go about doing that? So let's take a look. So if we go ahead and look at this, the first thing we need, if you've been following along with this series of videos, this should be pretty clear by now. There's a couple of things we need in order to program against a given contract, right? We need, what do we need again? We need the contract address, we need the contract's ABI, and we need the actual provider. Or if we're changing state, we need the signer, right, within the provider. So first, let's go ahead and get this contract address. How do we do that? I'm going to go ahead and grab any given token here, and I'm going to go down to details, and here's the contract address. I'm going to click this. This is going to take us to Etherscan, and now we can go ahead and copy that address. Awesome. So now we have the address. So let's go ahead back to our code here. And where's my code? There it is. And we're going to go ahead and write a new function. So I'm just going to say const, we'll call this query historical events. And we'll make this an async function because we will make some asynchronous calls here. And now let's first define the contract address that we want to query. And we'll say NFT contract is equal to, there's our address. So this is the Moonbirds. Awesome. Now the second thing we're going to need is what? We're going to need that ABI, our contract ABI. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because the Moonbirds project is an NFT contract, it's following the ERC 721 standard, we could pretty reliably assume that there is a transfer event being fired when these NFTs are transferred. So instead of doing what we did above, where we did earlier on, we copied and we pasted the entire ABI of the Long Island blockchain ERC20 token, we don't need the entire ABI. All we need is the specific event we're looking for. Now, in doing some research for this video, I found a really cool site here, this ABI download, smartcontracttoolkit.com/ABI. And this gives you some of the standard ABIs that exist, really 3 of them here, the ERC20, ERC721, and 1155. We need the 721. Now, we don't need any of the methods. We don't really need all of the events either. All we need is the transfer event. So I'm going to scroll down here. And let's grab the transfer. So here it is. All I need is really this piece here. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to copy this. And I just Control-C on the keyboard there. I'm going to go back to our code. And I'm going to say our NFT ABI. We'll make it equal to, it's an array, so I got to put this in brackets and then just paste this in here. Now I'm just going to format this a little bit and just indent it all nicey nice. And now you can see that we only have the ABI snippet for the event that we care about. So instead of having this large piece of data here, we just have a snippet of that. And you can see here that it defines a couple of things. It's not an anonymous event. It has some inputs, and you can see here where the indexed inputs are. It looks like they're all indexed. So we have the address, the from address, we have the to address, and we have the token ID, and we have the name of the actual event. Awesome. So now we have the ABI, and we already defined our provider in this project, right? So that's already defined above. So we don't need to go ahead and do that. And now we can go ahead and instantiate a new contract. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say NFT contract. NFT contract equals new ethers.contract, and now we're going to give it all that good information that we just defined. So NFT contract address, that's what we called it, right? Oh, we just called it NFT contract. Let's call it address because it's just a little bit more explicit. That's what it is, and we'll then give it the NFT ABI. And then we already have our provider defined. Now we don't need to use a signer because we are we're just querying information. We're not changing any state. And it looks like we may have to close our brackets here, right? Ah, that's what's going on. I'm like, why is that giving me a? Why is that complaining? There we go. So that should be okay. Cool. Now, this object here is chock full of tools for us to use to work with the Moonbirds project. So we can go ahead and start to call methods if we had all the ABI there, or query events. So how do we actually do that? So there are a couple of pieces to this puzzle. The first is we need to get a filter from the actual contract. So the first thing is to define a filter. So let's go ahead. Let's just try to visualize this real quick. I'm going to console.log NFT contract, and it's going to be .filters. All right, this is going to contain all of the different events that we can query against. So where are we now? We need to call this bad boy, right? It's not going to do anything unless we call it. So let's go ahead and put a new button in our front end. So I'm going to go here, go into our index.html, and let's add a new button. So we called it query historical event. I'm going to paste this in here, grab this, put this here. Okay, query Moonbirds. Awesome. So now if we go ahead and look at our application, we should have a nice little button here. So if we go ahead and hit this button, boom. All right, so now we're just logging out the filter on this contract. And you can see here that there is one method in here of transfer. Awesome. So we do have the event transfer. And we can see here that we have the parameters, and they're all nicey nice. We have the from and to address and the token ID. Excellent. Let's go back to our code here. And let's go back to our main.js. And now we have our filter. So now we need to actually grab this filter into a variable that we can use. So I'm going to go ahead and say const filter is equal to NFT contract.filters. and we're going to go ahead and grab that transfer. And now here's where we can do some filtration. If we keep everything null, right, and we can explicitly put null in here, so I'll put null, null, and null. So the from, to, and token ID are all nulls. This is basically saying, hey, whenever we query using this filter, I want to grab anytime this event transfers. Now what we could do is we could put values in here. Say for example, I only wanted to see if token number 1 transfers. I can go ahead and put a 1 in here. Now I may have to convert this 1 to a big number in order for this to actually work, but for illustrative purposes, we could just put values in here to actually query against this event and kind of trim down the results based on these values. I'm going to keep this all null, null, and null right now because we want everything. Awesome. So now we're not 100% there yet, right? We have our filter, but now we need to actually execute the query. So to do that, we're going to create another variable called query, and this is going to be an async function. So we'll go ahead and await that bad boy, and this is going to be against the NFT contract. And we're going to go ahead and use the query filter method, and we're going to pass in the filter and then a from and to block. So this is where we can constrain this query from and to certain blocks. So let's go ahead into the, we can get out of this one. I'm going to go into the Moonbirds project here, and let's take a look at some transfer events here. Let's see. Okay, awesome. This has a transfer event, and this was in this block. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this block. We'll go to this block, and maybe we'll go back in time a little bit and see what happens. So let's go back to our code here, and I'll put this both in here, and let's go back, say, 10 blocks here. So basically, we're querying 10 blocks here from and to using this filter. So we're looking at the transfer events on the Moonbirds project, which we instantiated here. And now let's go ahead and see what we get. So this is going to go ahead, and you know what? We don't have to call this query because this is actually executing the query. So why don't we call this results, because this is going to be really our result set, which we can then, you know, put onto the front end in any way we want, right? We can, if we're using React, we can put this into a state or something like that, and we can go ahead and render these. So I'm just going to simply say console.log results, keep it true with our beautiful front end that we're writing here. Let's go ahead and see what happens. So let's go ahead here, back to our front end. I'm going to refresh this. And now one important note here. My wallet, my MetaMask wallet, my test wallet here is connected to the mainnet. All of the other videos that we've done connected to a test net. We're querying a live contract now. So this is on the mainnet. So your wallet needs to be connected to the mainnet. And then we can go ahead and click this. Boom. And we have a result set here. So let's see what happened. Boom. So we have one result. So it's going to return an array here. The first result is going to be now the actual transaction that contains those events. And you can see here, let's see, look at our topics. And we should see, if we go ahead back here and we look at the logs and we look at the transfer, the second topic should be ending in BD2. Let's go ahead and see if that's right. There we go. Second topic ending in BD2. Awesome. So now we have this transfer event. So let's go a little bit further back in time. Let's take this and let's go back like 1,000 blocks and see what happens. I'm expecting to see a little bit more action here. There we go. So over the last 1,000 blocks, we've had 19 transfers of Moonbirds tokens. And we can go ahead and see here all of the different blocks, and then the transaction and the topics and all that good stuff. So we can go ahead and now use this information to further analyze these events from and tos, and you know, visualize them in any way, shape, or form that we'd like, and use these events. So this is a quick illustration on how we can query historical events on the Ethereum blockchain, looking at the events that fire from smart contracts right on chain. crazy powerful stuff. We could build some really interesting tools with this. And because it's following a standard, we should be able to, and stars around that should, plug in any other smart contract that follows the ERC 721 standard and be able to query the same transfer events. One interesting thing before we end off here is we could take these events and look at the from and to addresses and look at different marketplaces to see what marketplaces are actually selling these NFTs. That's something we've worked on in the past. All right. Any questions, comments, anything to add, please throw them below. If you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe. We're trying to post these semi-normally. Yeah, we're enjoying your comments. We're enjoying getting out there and communicating and collaborating with everyone. Thanks all.